Let's go back to the morning of May 24, 2019. It was the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, a time when families are usually planning barbecues and getaways. At roughly 8 o'clock a.m., Jennifer Dulos was seen dropping her children off at New Canaan Country School. Witnesses say she looked normal. She chatted briefly with friends, smiled, and then drove her Chevrolet Suburban back home. A neighbor's security camera captured her car entering her driveway at 8:05 a.m. That grainy footage is the last time anyone ever saw Jennifer Dulos alive. Jennifer had a busy day planned. She had two doctor's appointments scheduled in New York City, one at 11 o'clock a.m. and another at 1 p.m. She never showed up for either. At 11:30 a.m., the children's nanny, Lauren Almeida, arrived at the house. Immediately, the atmosphere felt wrong. The house was too quiet. Jennifer's handbag was sitting on the floor, something Lauren said Jennifer never did. But what was even stranger was the pantry. Jennifer was meticulous. She always stocked up on supplies. Yet, Lauren noticed there were only 2 rolls of paper towels left in the entire house. At the time, it was just a weird detail. Later, it would become a horrific clue. Lauren recalled a sinking feeling in her stomach. She said she never not answered her phone. She texted, she called, but there was only silence. By evening, when Jennifer hadn't arrived at her mother's apartment in New York to meet the kids, Lauren made the call that no one wants to make. She called the police. When police entered the garage, the picture became horrifyingly clear. They found blood spatter on the floor, on the side of a Range Rover parked inside, and on the wall. But it wasn't just the blood. It was the lack of it. Someone had tried to clean the scene. The missing paper towels. They had been used to wipe away the life of Jennifer Dulos. Jennifer's Suburban was later found abandoned 3 miles away, parked near Waveney Park. The engine was cold, the lights had been left on, the car was empty, Jennifer was gone. Investigators immediately looked at her estranged husband, Fotus Dulos, but Fotus had an alibi. He claimed he was at his home in Farmington, 70 miles away, all morning with his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis. However, modern criminals often forget that we live in a world of constant surveillance. Police seized Fotus's phone and tracked its location history. On the evening of the murder, May 24th, his phone traveled to Albany Avenue in Hartford, Connecticut, an area he had no reason to be in. This is the moment the case turned. City surveillance cameras captured a black Ford Raptor truck driving down Albany Avenue. The driver was Fotus Dulos. The passenger was Michelle Troconis. Over a 4-mile stretch, the truck stopped at more than 30 different public trash cans. At each stop, Fotus would hop out and toss a garbage bag into the bin. In one clip, he is seen frantically dropping a FedEx envelope into a storm drain. Police scrambled to recover those bags before the garbage trucks came. What they found was a treasure trove of evidence that Fotus thought was gone forever. Inside the bags were clothes stained with Jennifer's blood, sponges soaked in blood, zip ties likely used to restrain her, and perhaps most chilling, a poncho covered in her DNA. But that wasn't all. Back at Fotus's home, police found what they called the alibi scripts. These were handwritten notes, penned by Fotus and Michelle, detailing exactly what they were supposedly doing at specific times on the day of the murder. It wasn't a diary, it was a rehearsal. A script written to ensure their lies matched up perfectly. So, how did he do it without being seen? Police pieced together the theory. Fotus drove an employee's truck to New Canaan, parked it near Waveney Park, and unloaded a vintage French bicycle he owned. He cycled to the back of Jennifer's property, lying in wait for her to return from the school run. When she pulled into the garage at 8:05 a.m. trapped inside her car, he attacked. He had the motive. He had the opportunity. And thanks to the cameras on Albany Avenue, the police now had the physical evidence. This case is a complex web of lies, evidence, and tragedy, and there's so much more to uncover. If you want to dive deeper into cases like this, check out our other videos right here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. New Canaan, Connecticut. It is a place of quiet wealth, manicured lawns, and safety. It's the kind of town where people move to live out the American dream. And for a long time, it seemed like Jennifer Dulos had achieved exactly that. She was a mother of 5, a talented writer, and a woman born into privilege who carried herself with grace. But behind the high hedges and the heavy oak doors of her mansion, a nightmare was unfolding. It was a story of control, crumbling finances, and a divorce so toxic it would end in unimaginable violence. On May 24, 2019, Jennifer dropped her children off at school and simply vanished. What followed was a media storm that gripped the nation. Her estranged husband's defense team would try to paint a picture of a gone girl scenario, claiming Jennifer staged her own disappearance to frame him. But the evidence told a different story. A story of blood in the garage, a script written to fake an alibi, and a frantic run to dump trash bags across the city. This is the tragic story of Jennifer Dulos, the husband who wanted to erase her, and the secrets that refused to stay buried. To understand how this ended, we have to look at how it began. Jennifer Farber was born in New York City in 1968. She wasn't just wealthy, she came from a family of philanthropists and bankers. Her aunt by marriage was Liz Claiborne, yes, that Liz Claiborne. Jennifer grew up with the world at her feet. She was brilliant, graduating from Brown University and later earning a master's in writing from NYU. In the 90s, she was a vibrant presence in the New York literary scene. She wrote plays about romance and the fear of commitment, searching for a Prince Charming she hadn't yet found. Enter Fotus Dulos. Born in Turkey and raised in Athens, Greece, Fotus was the definition of charisma. He was ambitious, athletic, and determined to conquer the American business world. Like Jennifer, he had attended Brown University, and while they crossed paths in college, sparks didn't fly until decades later. They were connected at an airport in Aspen in 2003. At the time, Fotus was still married to his first wife, but that marriage was crumbling. He saw Jennifer as a fresh start. In an email, he told her he wanted to breathe life into their connection. By 2004, Fotus was divorced, and he and Jennifer were married in Manhattan. On the surface, it was a fairy tale. They moved to Farmington, Connecticut, into a massive home. Fotus started a luxury home building business, the Fur Group, largely funded by Jennifer's father. Jennifer became a full-time mother, giving birth to 5 children, including 2 sets of twins. But as the house filled with children, Jennifer's voice began to fade. She stopped writing. She isolated herself from her old friends. She was living in Fotus's world now, and Fotus demanded perfection. By 2017, the fairy tale was a distant memory. Fotus's business was built on image, but the foundation was cracking. He was essentially living off Jennifer's family fortune. When Jennifer's father passed away, the financial lifeline was cut, and the pressure mounted. Fotus was not a man who handled stress well. Friends described him as controlling and obsessed with appearances. He demanded the children be elite athletes, pushing them into competitive water skiing even when they were exhausted. Jennifer wrote in her private journals that the children were terrified to disobey their father. Then came the betrayal. Jennifer discovered Fotus was having an affair with Michelle Troconis, a Venezuelan socialite and former marketing executive. When confronted, Fotus didn't beg for forgiveness. Instead, he suggested that Michelle move into the family home with them. He wanted his wife, his kids, and his mistress all under one roof. For Jennifer, this was the breaking point. But she was terrified. She knew Fotus had bought a gun, a violation of their family agreement. Fearing for her safety, she planned a secret escape. In June 2017, under the cover of darkness, Jennifer packed the children into a car and fled to a rental home in New Canaan, Connecticut. She filed for divorce the next day. The custody battle that followed was nothing short of a war. Over 2 years, there were hundreds of court motions. Fotus eventually lost access to his children because he defied court orders by letting them see his mistress, Michelle. He was losing his family. He was being sued by Jennifer's mother for millions in unpaid loans. He was cornered. And a cornered narcissist is a dangerous thing. At 8:05 a.m. on May 24, 2019, security footage captured Jennifer Dulos' Chevrolet Suburban pulling into her driveway after she dropped her kids at school. It was the last time she was ever seen alive. Later that day, friends grew worried when she missed appointments and wasn't answering her phone. By evening, police were called to her home. What they found inside suggested a violent struggle. There were bloodstains on the garage floor, on a garbage can, and on the wall. The blood belonged to Jennifer Dulos. Someone had tried to clean it up, but they hadn't been thorough enough. As investigators dug into her life, one person of interest immediately emerged: her estranged husband, Fotus Dulos. But Fotus had an alibi. Or at least, he thought he did. His girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, had written up what police would later call the alibi scripts. These were detailed timelines of their activities on the day Jennifer went missing. But the timelines kept changing, and Michelle's story didn't quite line up. The real breakthrough came from something much less sophisticated: surveillance cameras. Police began tracking Fotus's movements on May 24th. They discovered that morning, an old red Toyota Tacoma belonging to one of Fotus's employees had been driven from Farmington to New Canaan and back. This wasn't just any employee's truck, it was a vehicle Fotus had access to. Police believed he used it to drive to Jennifer's home, lie in wait, and attack her in the garage. But the most damning evidence was yet to come. That evening, around 7 p.m., surveillance cameras along Albany Avenue in Hartford captured Fotus's black Ford Raptor pickup truck making more than 30 stops. Each time, Fotus got out and dumped black trash bags into different bins along the 4-mile stretch. In the passenger seat beside him was Michelle Troconis. When police recovered those bags, the case blew wide open. Inside, they found zip ties, gloves, and sponges stained with Jennifer's blood. They found a Vineyard Vines shirt that Jennifer was likely wearing that day, cut up and soaked in her blood. They also found license plates that had been altered with tape plates that were once registered to Fotus Dulos. He wasn't just cleaning up a crime scene, he was trying to erase a life. On June 1, 2019, just over a week after Jennifer disappeared, Fotus Dulos and Michelle Troconis were arrested and charged with tampering with evidence and hindering prosecution. They both pleaded not guilty and were released on bond. But the public pressure was immense. Fotus became a tabloid villain overnight. He gave interviews insisting on his innocence, claiming Jennifer had staged a Gone Girl disappearance to frame him, even suggesting she was mentally unwell. His lawyer argued she was a writer who might have created a revenge fantasy. But the evidence painted a very different picture, one of a violent, premeditated attack. For months, the legal battle dragged on. Even without a body, prosecutors were building a case for murder. Then, in January 2020, they made their move. Fotus Dulos was arrested and charged with capital murder, and kidnapping. Michelle Troconis and Fotus's friend and former lawyer, Kent Mawhinney, were charged with conspiracy to commit murder. It seemed like justice for Jennifer was finally within reach. But Fotus Dulos had one final, desperate act planned. On January 28, 2020, the day he was scheduled to appear for an emergency bond hearing, Fotus Dulos failed to show up. When police arrived at his Farmington mansion for a welfare check, they found him in his garage, in the driver's seat of his SUV, with a hose running from the exhaust pipe into the car. He had attempted suicide. Paramedics managed to restart his heart, and he was flown to a hospital. But the damage was done. 2 days later, Fotus Dulos was pronounced dead. In a note he left behind, he maintained his innocence, writing, "I refuse to spend even an hour more in jail for something I had nothing to do with." With Fotus Dulos dead, the central figure in the case was gone. But the quest for justice wasn't over. The focus shifted entirely to his co-conspirators. In March 2024, after a lengthy trial, Michelle Troconis was found guilty on all charges, including conspiracy to commit murder. The jury believed she had helped Fotus cover up the crime. She was sentenced to 14.5 years in prison. Kent Mawhinney's case is still pending. Despite all the arrests and the conviction, one heartbreaking question remains: where is Jennifer? Her body has never been found. Her 5 children are now living with her mother, Gloria Farber. They have lost both their parents, one to a brutal act of violence and the other to a final act of cowardice. The case of Jennifer Dulos is a chilling reminder that the most dangerous monsters can be the ones who live right next door, behind a picture-perfect facade. In January 2020, the hammer finally dropped. Fotus Dulos was charged with capital murder and kidnapping. His girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, and his close friend and attorney, Kent Mawhinney, were charged with conspiracy to commit murder. The walls were closing in. Fotus was facing the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was financially ruined, his reputation was completely destroyed, and he was under strict house arrest. On the morning of January 28, 2020, Fotus was due in court for an emergency bond hearing. The prosecution had discovered serious issues with his bail collateral, and it was highly likely his bond would be revoked. He was just hours away from going back to jail, and this time, it was probably for good. But Fotus Dulos never made it to the courthouse. That morning, he sent his new girlfriend, who was living with him at the time, out on a grocery run. Once he was completely alone, he went into his garage, attached a vacuum hose to the exhaust pipe of his SUV, ran it into the cabin, and sealed the windows. When police arrived to check on why he was late for his court appearance, they found him unresponsive inside the vehicle. Paramedics managed to resuscitate him briefly, but the damage was already done. 2 days later, Fotus Dulos died in a New York hospital. He left a note on the dashboard of the car. In it, he declared his innocence one last time, writing, "I refuse to spend even an hour in jail for something I had nothing to do with, for Jennifer's family and friends." His death wasn't justice. It was a final, cowardly act of control, by taking his own life. Fotus took the location of Jennifer's body to his grave. He denied her 5 children the chance to bury their mother, and he denied the public the full truth of what happened that day. But while Fotus was gone, the pursuit of justice didn't end with him. In early 2024, nearly 5 years after Jennifer vanished, Michelle Troconis finally stood trial for her role in the crime. Her defense was simple: yes, she was the other woman, but she wasn't a murderer. She claimed she was just a bystander, a woman deeply in love who had no idea what her boyfriend was really doing that fateful morning. She argued that she thought the bags they were frantically dumping all over Albany Avenue contained nothing more than dirt from one of Fotus's construction sites, not evidence of a brutal homicide. The jury, however, didn't buy it. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence. They pointed to the infamous alibi script. Why would you need to help someone write a fake timeline for the day of a murder if you had nothing to hide? Why would you lie to the police over and over again about where Fotus was when his wife was being killed? And why would you sit silently in a truck while your boyfriend makes 30 different stops at random trash cans in a high-crime area of Hartford during the trial? Prosecutors also revealed the cruel and calculated strategy Fotus had planned to use in court. The Gone Girl defense. He intended to claim that Jennifer was mentally unstable and had staged her own disappearance, just like the character in the popular novel, all to frame him for a crime he didn't commit. It was a vicious lie designed to destroy her character even after he had already destroyed her life. In March 2024, the jury delivered their verdict. Michelle Troconis was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, tampering with evidence, and hindering prosecution. She was later sentenced to 20 years in prison. It was a victory for the prosecution. But for Jennifer's family, it was a hollow one, because the one question that has haunted them for years still remains unanswered. To this day, Jennifer Dulos has never been found. Her 5 children are now growing up without their mother, raised by their loving grandmother, Gloria. They live every day in the shadow of a tragedy that feels like a twisted movie script but is painfully, permanently real. This case is a stark reminder that domestic violence doesn't always look like a bruised eye or a broken bone. Sometimes, it looks like a wealthy, charming businessman, a perfect mansion in a beautiful suburb, and a slow, methodical campaign of control that ends in the garage of a quiet family home. What do you think happened to Jennifer's remains? Do you believe Kent Maroney, the attorney still awaiting his own trial, holds the final piece of the puzzle? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you found this deep dive compelling, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow, and subscribe for more true crime investigations. We'll see you in the next video. Stay safe.